Breaking news tonight, the coronavirus outbreak
now spreading so quickly.
The World Health Organization
has just declared that this is a pandemic.
The world changed.
The first case of human-to-human transmission.
And the news informed us.
The first U.S. death from COVID-19.
But TV news changed as well.
Savannah working from home once again.
Sure, I'll be anchoring Meet the Press from my home office.
And it's taking an emotional toll on the reporters.
My parents do worry about me.
It can be super scary sometimes to have to go out into the field and work during this pandemic.
I was really scared last night, getting ready for bed.
I co-anchor Good Day New York and have been with Fox 5 for over 30 years. I thought I reported on it all, rampant crime, economic downturns, terrorist attacks, but a pandemic sidelining every person in New York City. This is a place that never stops working. But not only is New York sidelined, the whole world is sidelined.
I was taught that journalists are essential workers years ago, heading toward danger to tell people to stay away from it. I was forced to drive to work through blizzards, blackouts, and tornadoes, even slept on the floor of the newsroom. But this time was very different. When MSNBC decided that I could produce news shows from my couch, I couldn't believe it. So I interviewed dozens of journalists from across the country to hear just how much the coronavirus pandemic has changed their lives.
I was covering a protest at our state capitol in Lansing, Michigan. That was definitely my most heightened sense of anxiety, because that's the only time during this whole quarantine that I actually have been surrounded by a crowd of people. And it was a crowd of people, they're all at a rally, right? So it's a crowd of people who weren't really paying attention or caring too much about social distancing. It was a crowd of people where I'd say at least 80% of them weren't wearing masks.
We were terrified, and I think anyone who tells you otherwise is lying.
I've been a reporter for a couple of years now, so I've covered things like shootings, manhunts, and tornadoes. I will say the difference in covering this is now I do fear what I'm bringing home to my family, which I never had to do before.
When I'm on the job, I am just so laser focused on what I'm doing that all that fear is kind of like washed away a little bit. I'm so focused on exactly how can I do this story justice.
On the outside, I'm calm, cool, and collected when I do the news. I'm a morning anchor. I have to be bubbly, informative, and entertaining, right? But on the inside, it is a roller coaster of emotions.
And when you covered Hurricane Katrina, and a lot of reporters, when they were living out of the live truck for a week or so. They had to wear special suits to avoid the raw sewage in the streets, but they could always leave. They could go home. This, you can't leave. You can't go home. You go home and you are living the story that you've been telling.
We're not immune to what's happening around us. We just try to be so that we can get through the day, because we also have to report on it. All of the mental health guidelines that you see, step away from the news when it becomes too much. Don't take it in. We don't have that choice. That's one thing about being an essential employee. No matter what's going on, we don't have that choice.
When you're going out into the community and covering these stories day after day after day, and then coming home and living it yourself, that's really a stressor on your psyche.
In addition to the emotional toll, there's the health toll.
Man, I feel like I went to hell and back, and I was one of the lucky ones.
Some high-profile anchors contracted the virus.
Boy, am I glad to be back. COVID-19 gave me a beating physically and mentally for 2 weeks.
I've never had a fever, never had cough, never had shortness of breath, never had chills, any of the classic symptoms you've been reading about.
From the moment I learned that I was exposed to positive cases, we've taken this quarantine seriously because you have to stop this spread.
I tested positive. Scary, yes, as you might imagine, but better me than you.
Some in the industry lost their lives to COVID-19.
Our talented studio camera operator, Tony Greer, has passed away from complications due to the coronavirus.
For more than 25 years, Larry Edgeworth was a beloved audio technician here at NBC.
Maria rose from page to Emmy Award-winning producer to top executive.
While others are working through losing a loved one.
My grandmother died of coronavirus about a month ago. I had to say goodbye to her
over FaceTime. I had to watch her funeral over FaceTime. I couldn't be there to hug my family members, to hug my father.
Evan told me the experience has made him a more empathetic reporter, bringing him closer to his viewers.
It's put me closer to all the people who I'm covering. It's put me closer to the problems at hand. And I can certainly say for the first time, probably in my career, that I know what it's like to be the person I'm interviewing.
The news looks very different than it did just a few months ago.
COVID-19 has completely changed how we do our business.
I think it's changed because it has had to change in terms of just logistics.
It's definitely a challenging time for reporters like myself, but I do feel safe when I wear my mask and I see others wearing masks as well.
Whenever I do go outside, I use a mask, try to find an empty space while keeping a safe distance from my coworkers.
I find the actual mask pretty hard to breathe through, especially when you're talking on camera. So I prefer to go with the bandana look in the morning.
Reporters who are required to go into the field are finding unique solutions to the challenges they face, like how to social distance.
We simply just switch this out for a longer cable. Now, believe it or not, this is a $6 broomstick from Home Depot.
This right here, this is my secret weapon. It's a light stand that we retrofitted to be a mic stand. So I'll interview anybody, but I keep them at least 6 feet away.
It certainly is much better than holding out a microphone to your farthest extent. I don't have a long arm, so it totally helps to have that pull.
As Latinos, we usually go with a handshake or with a hug, and that has completely stopped because of coronavirus. Now we usually just awkwardly stand there and talk from a distance and just acknowledge each other, but make sure there is no sort of touching.
I shot the entire story through the front window of his house. So I got all my clips through an open front door.
We're getting ready to film one of our stand-ups for our story tonight at 9. You can see this is photojournalist Tuan Nguyen. Hi, Tuan. He's set up everything, and I'm not allowed to touch any of the equipment now. So he sets up his camera on the tripod. We have the light, and of course the boom mic, which maintains a safe distance. He sets it up like this, so all I have to do is walk up here and talk.
Well, I haven't physically been past the garage of my station in several weeks, working almost exclusively out of my car. My photographer and I are also working in separate cars.
This is our office. We work from our car most of the time. We have the camera set up, we do FaceTime interviews, then we're able to adjust it into the computer. We edit from our car.
Even finding a restroom during a lockdown is a challenge.
We are using this hotel room to mainly use the bathroom. That way we are minimizing to go inside businesses, which is the normal thing that we do when we are reporting in the streets. And on top of that, most of the businesses are closed and they don't let you to go inside.
Sanitizing is now an essential part of the workday.
And this right here is actually my cleaning supply bag.
The first thing I do when I get into the control room is clean, because there's 1, 2, 3, 4 producers that go in there on a day-to-day basis.
According to a CNBC survey, the pandemic prompted more than 50 million people across the U.S. to start working from home, including some journalists.
It is 3 a.m. and I'm walking down the stairs into my basement. Why? Because this is now my newsroom and my studio.
And I have my bar stool from my kitchen island. Of course, behind me is my dining room. Nothing fancy, but on a normal morning, I set this up around 4:15 a.m. We're on the air by 4:30 a.m. It's not easy to be awake that early when you're at home in isolation and there's no one else around you in studio.
Anchors and reporters used to working in multi-million-dollar studios were tasked with building their own studios to broadcast the news from home.
We have an app that's called the Live View app, and it's able to take our live shots straight from our home.
We are pretty much anchoring 2 out of the 4 of our evening broadcasts from an iPhone.
And these black blankets are moving blankets that we have set up because I'm told it makes my voice sound less echoey in a house that echoes quite a lot.
The teleprompter here is just in case of emergency.
While the commute is shorter, the challenges of working from home add up.
You know, my co-anchors are like family to me. They have been there with me and they've walked through so many different pieces of my life in the past few years. So not being able to be with all of those people who I love so much
has been difficult. Having 2 toddlers and telling them to be quiet and let mom focus while I'm working is an oxymoron. They just don't understand, and they shouldn't have to at ages 2 and 4. Say bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
I feel guilty. I feel like a bad mom, locking myself away, telling them that I'm off limits. Just the other night, my 2-year-old came into this office while I was broadcasting live. I wasn't on camera, but I was reading, and you could definitely hear him cry out for mommy and try and love on me.
You know, I live in a tiny studio apartment. I didn't have room for a full-size desk, so they gave me a coffee table and I put it up on bed risers.
Here's my viewfinder so I can see myself. It's not the newest camera. We're a medium-sized market, so we do the best we can with all the resources we got.
Many reporters have found a way to innovate from home.
We want to be inside people's homes. We want to be experiencing quarantine with them without actually being there. So we've been training our subjects how to shoot video for news and send the clips to us, and then we put the story together. So we're texting back and forth as she's actually shooting the story.
We're doing a lot of our interviews via Zoom. So I'm not interviewing like a 10th of the amount of people in person that I usually was.
I've done a lot of Skype calls and a lot of Zoom calls. So it's not only added an extra part to connecting with people, it's made it easier to connect with people through that way as well.
They're telling stories in new ways.
I called the hospital and said, we know this nurse is named Stephanie. She treated this patient named Tony. Is there any way you can find her?
Like Erica Ferrando, who reunited a recovered COVID-19 patient, Tony, with a nurse who she says saved her life during a Zoom interview.
We were able to track down Stephanie.
You actually found her?
We found her.
Oh my God.
You look wonderful.
Oh my God. Oh my God, you're beautiful.
So are you.
I was overwhelmed because I didn't know what kind of reaction to expect, but the way Tony just started crying when she saw her, it was like, wow, like she obviously made such an impact in her life.
Without a newsroom full of technicians and IT analysts, some veteran journalists got a lesson in at-home broadcasting from a surprising source.
The first step is to cut a hole at the bottom of your shoebox.
A viral video from a graduate student who needed a teleprompter for her school's newscast.
I wanted to make something that I could use at home with the things that I already had at hand, so I didn't have to leave my house for anything. I had an old shoebox, some duct tape, an old picture frame, and I just kind of MacGyvered it.
Here's a student who identified a problem that virtually every broadcast journalist in the country had, which is, oh my gosh, no prompter.
A lot of people are probably going through this at home, especially for anchors. I posted it and it like blew up. People that I watch, you know what I mean, on TV or see online, like Gotti Schwartz, he retweeted it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I love you.
Well, the bookshelves and picture frames are nothing like the lavish studios with custom lighting and huge touchscreens. Some say it's exactly what's needed right now.
There's something intimate about reporting from your home, and the audience kind of gets a view into our world and our life.
One of the things we've been hearing from viewers is they want authenticity. They want real, they want transparency. They don't feel that, people sitting in a studio reading a prompter and talking at them is engaging, and that's where a lot of news viewers have left us. Well, there is nothing more real than an anchor sitting in her house and her dog barking and her kid crying and her not being able to read a prompter, but talking from the bottom of her heart about stories that she's so passionate about.
Ellen Crook is Vice President of News at Tegna, which owns 62 television stations across the country.
All right, a lot more. When Hoda cried, was there anything more real than that? It's still one of the most popular stories, even on our local news sites.
Take a moment. Sorry. It's a lot. I know where your heart is, my dear. I do.
Could being real outweigh the glitz and glamour of television?
Bye, Char Char. Bye, Vail.
See you next week.
There's one person I had to ask.
To me, that concept is dangerous.
My former journalism professor who taught us anchors' clothing, accessories, and background should not distract from what's most important, the information.
It doesn't have to be a background of a kitchen or a bedroom. I mean, are we going to be doing them from the bathroom, from the shower, from the laundry room? These are touches that I think are great for reality shows and maybe even a talk show. But I think for newscasts, there should be a kind of professionalism.
The stories that we are doing have never been more important.
All of our viewers right now, they're really making a big connection with us.
Meanwhile, more people are watching than ever. The first 3 months of 2020 make up the highest rated quarter in history for Fox News and MSNBC.
Good evening, and it's great to have you with us.
The top show in all of TV in April was ABC's evening newscast.
Our local news products are stronger than they've ever been. Now marry that with, at the same time, we've taken 95% of our staff and they're working from home. And those two things happening at the same time is just pretty remarkable.
In some cases, though, competitive nature was thrown out completely.
The news organizations decided that we could do a better job of serving the public if we actually worked together.
Like in Colorado, where more than 40 TV, newspaper, radio, and digital newsrooms decided to work together and share content.
Nearly 24 news organizations who might normally be competing against each other, and instead, for at least one day, we came together to tell the story of the impact of the coronavirus pandemic on the state of Colorado.
This is when our community needs us the most.
I'm not afraid to go out and do my job.
I am so proud to be a reporter.
It's unclear how long the pandemic will last.
We were the lifeline to people as they needed to know, and still to this day, where they can go, where they can't go.
Or what the lasting impacts will be on journalism.
The real heroes of the story are the doctors and the nurses and the grocery store workers. But I think in history, time will also see that journalists played a role as some of the heroes that united us, that brought us together, that provided life-saving information.
But 2020 is sure to be remembered.
Now we all have the tools in our pocket.
For the journalists who stepped up.
COVID-19 has really been stressful for a lot of us.
Write the first rough draft of history.
I like being a source of information for people, and if that means being in the middle of danger, hopefully I helped educate someone in the process and subsequently helped save lives.
This has really been a year that I will never forget, and an experience that I will never forget.